I'm here because I am a roaring lion crying out righteousness. Kellyanne Conway, who had worked in a very prestigious position in the Trump administration, was married to an attorney, a conservative attorney, if that's such a thing, named George Conway, and he was on the beat the other day. We actually called Trump a megalomaniac. Essentially, you have that. There was an interview, wasn't the only thing that went on in this particular clip I'm going to show you in just a moment. But I think it's important that I think Kellyanne Conway and George Conway have parted and gone different ways. I was curious how on earth George Conway, who had a very strong opposition to Trump while he was president, his wife was working for her, Kellyanne. She's the one who coined the phrase alternative facts, if y'all remember that.
You've got two political parties in this country, two political coalitions, and he's the head of one of them. He's the leading contender to be the Republican presidential nominee. He was the last Republican president. Political violence emanating from the very heights of our political system from one of the two major parties, that's the red line for our democracy. And Donald Trump has far crossed that line. Ruth Ben-Ghiat is a professor of history and Italian studies at New York University, author of the book Strong Men from Mussolini to the Present. George Conway is a prominent conservative attorney and former Republican, and both join me now. George, people can speculate about the state of mind in all this, but the pattern here is clear, and I thought, what Cassidy Hutchinson relays in that book, where she can't look into his mind either, but what she can say is he's watching them say, hang Mike Pence on TV, and then he tweets that. You can draw your own conclusions about the degree to which this figure views the threat of violence as an actual tool to explicitly wield on his behalf.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't take that seriously and don't quite understand it because it's foreign to them. But the two kinds of people, the two categories of people who best understood Donald Trump in 2015 and 2016 were students of psychology and psychiatry, and then students of history like Ruth. And they both come at it from different directions, but they get to the same place. From a psychological standpoint, the explanation for his behavior on January 6th is that he's a narcissistic sociopath, a psychopath, a malignant narcissist. He's all of those things, a megalomaniac, and all of those things intersect. He wants power. He has no conscience. He feels that he can do whatever he wants and that he's immune from rules. And that's exactly how he behaved on January 6th. And that's what you're seeing now in all of his other threats of what he's going to do if he's elected president again. And the historians look at that from, we've seen these people before in history, and here's what they have done. And Ruth wrote an excellent book that I recommend to everyone. I've been recommending it for 3 years now, Strong Men, that basically goes through what these people are all like from the historical standpoint and how they behave and how they operate. And they operate just like Donald Trump.
Yeah, and one of the things that is striking here at the just sort of day-to-day level, Ruth, is, and Cassidy Hutchinson talks about this, New York Times talk about it, is if you go after powerful people, right, in a liberal and open society, there's all sorts of things that you might risk, right? You might have career issues, there's reputational issues, maybe you'll get sued for defamation, right? There's a bunch of things. But that's all within the boundaries of a liberal democracy and open society. The thought that you will be hurt, or the people you love be hurt, that's a different kind of thing. And this is what New York Times says. The FBI has seen the number of threats against its personnel and facilities surge since its agents carried out the court-authorized search of Mar-a-Lago.
All right, pause right there, Mr. Engineer. I wanted to be able to get us to this point where, I never thought I would live in a world, and it's still taking me some time to digest, that threats are being made against the FBI. These are the guys who got the guns. These guys got the federal badges. These guys got the power. These guys can bring out the military, the FBI, right? And threats are being made against the FBI. That people are calling the FBI office and saying, we're gonna whack you. They've had to put together, and this will probably come up in this report if I get to the rest of this. The FBI has, since Trump, right, has had to form a unit within the FBI nationally to protect the FBI agents and their families and children. Since Trump. We're just this is all it's like saying we got to have somebody protect the police station. you know, got to have somebody to protect the police. The threats, and then, I mean, you're going to make a threat against somebody. You make against threat somebody who doesn't carry a big gun and a badge and can put you under the jailhouse for a zillion years, can send you to Alcatraz, the FBI. And these are the threats that are being made against them by the Trump supporters. Unless, of course, you know, they want to say, no, it's Antifa that's using the name of MAGA to call and threaten the FBI. I'm just not going to say that. I don't know if anybody will say that or not. They tried that. They tried to say that riot, the assault on the Temple of Democracy on the 6th of January 2021 was Antifa, was black people. that was a joke, far worse. But, you know, did you ever think you'd live in a world where the FBI is now afraid of the American public? I mean, Legs Diamond and Al Capone and all that crowd, you know, would have relished to live in a day. But that's what Trump has been able to inspire. You know, when I hear it, you know, the Hamite people, they're black people, they call themselves black, they're Hamites, saying defund the police. I said, what an idiot idea. Don't keep the police, don't be defunding the police. There's a whole lot of criminal, mad people out there with guns and rapists and robbers and thieves and mother stabbers and father rapers out here. Don't defund the police, the black people were saying, right? And now you got the white people saying, defund the FBI. Did you ever think you'd live in a world like that? But it's going to get worse. You haven't seen the tip of the iceberg. Because Trump is the trigger of the tribulation. That's nothing. Nobody wants to hear Pastor Manny. He always talking that old Bible talk. No, Trump is the trigger of the tribulation. We're in it, brother. Nah, Trump, that boy is the trigger of the tribulation. He going to burn America down. That's right. It ain't over with. And I'm not saying he can or that he will be president in 2024, but I'll say this to you. I figure you'll listen to me. Trump has a better shot at becoming president, winning the election in the 2024 election than Joe Biden by the time Biden. First of all, Biden, there's a lot of infighting going on. The problem with Biden, I'm coming back to the FBI and the guns and the threats and all that kind of stuff, threatening people with guns, threatening the national police, these people out there threatening the FBI. But Biden, the problem with, the problem, maybe this ought to be a separate segment, the reason why Trump has a better chance of winning the presidential election other than Joe Biden is because nobody who's a Democrat wants Biden. And Biden don't want Kamala Harris, and people who don't want Kamala Harris to be president who are Democrats, but they don't want Kamala Harris, the last thing on the planet. They'd rather have Trump as president than have Kamala Harris. So there's a mess going on in the Democrat Party right now. They don't know what to do. Then you got this idiot like Cornel West, who I just styled and profile. He ought to go somewhere and sit down with his old gray-haired self. Anyway, so Trump has a real possibility. In fact, in some of the polls, and a lot of people say the polls this far out for the presidency, 15, 16 months out, don't really mean a lot. Well, Trump is beating Biden in some polls, CNN, New York Times poll, Washington Post polls. Trump is beating Biden by 2 or 3 points to win the presidency. And the other thing with Biden is that Biden acts like an old man. I mean, I was he 82 years old, something like that. That's okay, that's going up there, but it ain't the end of the world. Heck, Jimmy Carter was out 99 years old riding around here in Roslyn, riding around out there in Georgia on a peanut farm down there the other day. Did y'all see that video? Jimmy Carter, 99 years old, went to a hospice several months ago and he still won't kick the bucket. So, 82, listen, Nancy Pelosi is 84. Y'all know fancy Nancy Pelosi from San Francisco, former Speaker of the House. And Nancy's 84. Mitch McConnell's at 80-something. So Biden is a teenager compared to Nancy Pelosi, but he walks like an old man. Look out there, he said. No joke, he said. Tell him to go sit down somewhere. Then he wears all them tight, skinny pants. So the Democrats don't want Biden, but they scared to death that Kamala Harris is going to be president. So, and it was that boy Jim Clyburn from down there in South Carolina that put on the ticket in the first place. But it got Biden the presidency. So going back to this matter, so we have the rest of that video, Miss India, of the FBI being threatened. I just never thought I'd live in a world where the FBI would be putting up fences around their joint because people are threatening to kill the members of the FBI. And it's a national phenomenon now. It's only going to get worse. We're living in a time, I'm telling you, Trump is the trigger of the tribulation. And you're going to see, you're going to be knocking on my door asking me for advice and counsel in not too many days, because this is the only place the truth is coming from. Everybody else is trying to do a Democrat political, if you will, dissemination of what's happening. But no, we're in the tribulation. Go ahead, Miss Engineer. Let the rest of that run.
Created a special unit to deal with the threats. A U.S. official said threats since then have risen more than 300%, in part because the identities of employees and information about them are being spread online. What does this do to a society when this is now just an accepted part of how things operate?
Yeah, it's how we get to the GOP presidential debate, where all of the candidates undercut their own power and humiliate themselves, raising their hands, saying that they would support Donald Trump, who wasn't even there, even if he becomes a convicted felon. This is, the politics of fear. And what you're describing is these are, dynamics that are also typical of corruption. Because fear is how corrupt authoritarians get people to do things. But what Donald Trump's been doing, and we can look back at this, is what ever since fascism, all authoritarians do. They try and change the perception of violence in the minds of the population from something repugnant to something that becomes necessary and even morally righteous.
All right, so we're looking at a third world situation where, in Venezuela or in Turkey or in, some of the Eastern Bloc nations, where violence is now being used against the citizens of America, being led by its president or by its leader or by its dictator. And it's kind of happening in a way where most people just don't believe that it could happen. We thought that America was so insulated from this kind of thing that we don't believe it as we see it developing. And it's developed to a point right now where there's a point of no return. There's no way you can stop it now. It has to run its course. The destruction, if they have to burn down the White House, if they have to burn it down, and people are running for the hills to get away from the violence between the parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, and Trump becomes president again. It has to run its course. I'm not saying he will be president again. I'm just saying he had a much better shot at becoming president again than Joe Biden, mainly because of Kamala Harris and the fact that Joe Biden acts around like an old man.